Welcome to Exploring the Mystical Side of Life with your host, Linda Lang.
Hi, this is Linda Lang from thoughtchange.com, and I'm here today with Erika Redford from the Sparkle in the Deep podcast. Erika is also a starseed indigo, and we are going to have a lovely chat today about how to live a mystical life. Welcome, Erika.
Thank you. Wow, thank you. I feel very comfortable talking with you. Nice.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I'm excited to share the idea of inviting miracles, magic, opportunities into our life, synchronicities. I'm so curious to hear what you have to say on the topic. So when you talk about how to have a mystical life, how would you define that?
I would define it as living in a space of magic, living in a space of wonder, living in a space where you step back and let miracles take form and take shape. You know, it's like planting the seed. It's a pretty good metaphor. You got to step back and let it grow. It's kind of a beautiful place and a beautiful way to live.
It's a beautiful, beautiful way to live. It's kind of like always being in the flow.
Yeah, it really is.
And so I know I use the term magic all the time. And for some people, they think of magic as the kind of stage production.
Yeah.
We're all magicians because we're all creating all of the time.
Absolutely. And I was reading, I'm a big fan of Evelyn Underhill, and I was reading her book, and she talked about how we have this idea of magic. It's like pulling rabbits out of a hat, or, you know, it's like pulling a bouquet of flowers from underneath your arm or whatever. And in reality, she was saying how it's kind of like this outdated concept that we have. And, you know, it's a beautiful verb to conjure. And reading about this, in her mind, magic is at one end of the spectrum. You know, you get things from being magical. Like, you know, people want to get more money, they want to get this, or they want to get that. And then in regards to mysticism, it's a giving and drawing closer to the divine.
Yeah, absolutely. And although we are creating our lives every day and every moment of every day, we don't necessarily have control over the creation because there's so much that goes into that pot than just our conscious intention.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of forces at work, and it's not just our own personal will in the mix. You know, there's angels, there's everything in creation is working in co-creation, I guess.
Absolutely. And there is that thing of divine timing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Timing is everything.
Timing is everything. And some of the things that make that pot of creation a little bit murky can be things like, you know, holding on to grudges or, you know, a kind of negative emotions, belief systems, patterns.
That's also part of living a mystical life. You know, there's, according to Evelyn Underhill, there's 3 processes. You know, there's the awakening process where, you know, something happens and your consciousness starts to shift. And then there's the purification part of the process where you're kind of opening up the cellar doors and letting a lot of light in, letting healing in, so you can move forward and you can be filled with light. You know, there's also the dark night of the soul, and then there's the illumination where you're basically vibrating light, and even your physicality is not as dense. Forgiveness is a huge one. It is really a huge one, because lacking or blocking that forgiveness, you know, you're not creating the space for a miracle to manifest.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's forgiveness for our own selves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And having the self-compassion. The other night I was laying in bed, and I kind of call it my bedtime ritual, where I focus on my breathing. I use my mind in, you know, all kinds of different ways, positive self-talk. And, I deepen my breathing, I go within, and I was just feeling a lot of self-compassion for myself and bringing that self-forgiveness to myself for putting myself in situations that, I would beat myself up for, so I call it my bedtime practice. I connect with the angels. I do all kinds of work, and then I enjoy my light show. Call it my bedtime light show that I get to see, and it's pretty awesome.
What a beautiful, beautiful daily ritual. What would you recommend for people that might have a bit of a challenge finding that compassion for themselves? Do you have any little tips or tricks that might be able to trigger a little bit more self-forgiveness for people that struggle with that?
That's a great question. That is a really good question, and I feel, I was thinking about this, because when I quote unquote do something wrong, you turn it inward and you basically berate your own self. And I think the trick is maybe not even the trick. I think instead of turning what you've done wrong on yourself, that compassion, that love, that thing that you're feeling out in the world, you got to turn that back inward. And, basically your ego, the lies that your mind is using against yourself, you got to kind of not play that game, I guess. Like one time I was driving my car and I was having all these negative thoughts, and it literally felt like a screen just lifted, and I was quiet and silent, and there were no negative thoughts that I was using to berate myself. And I don't know if it's a veil or what that is, but it's just flying around. There's just so many negative thoughts, and people are judging themselves. They're, not perfect enough. They're this or they're that. And I guess it's just coming to your center of self-acceptance and being gentle with yourself and leaving space in your own self for a miracle to occur, because you're creating space in your field. I guess that's kind of what I'm.
Yeah, and definitely. You need to create space. And the one thing that I would really like the listeners to understand is that, thoughts are things, emotions are things, and they do take up space in the psyche. They have weight or density to them. And once you can let them go, you have space, you have more
Yeah.
lightness. You can become that light that you were talking about earlier on, how you actually become the light.
Absolutely. You do become the light. And thoughts are things, and, and it depends on how much emotional, like, like a football quarterback, if you throw the thought or the, behind with a lot of emotion, it's going to travel. And it basically just flies around in the air. And sometimes I wonder how much mind control is going in with all the psychic debris that's flying around. But returning to your breath and returning to your miracle, basically.
I think the trick really, when people start going down that kind of negative self-talk loop, because quite often people don't even realize when it's starting. They're in it.
It's so sneaky. And being mindful, being in a, I think it all also comes down to brain health, being mindful of when you're starting to go down that track, catching your mind, playing those games, because you're creating you are creating that loop in your head where you will automatically go, regardless of if someone's giving you a weird look or whatever is going on for you. But having the brain health and the mindfulness to kind of stop what's happening in its tracks.
Absolutely. Awareness is definitely key. And sometimes you can just have a little trigger that can just shift things for you. Whether that's a total stop, maybe you tell yourself, okay, stop it, or turn it to something positive, or totally switch topics. There are little tricks that you can use to kind of get out of that ruminating monkey mind.
getting out of yourself and out of the limitingness of your ego. And one time when I was going through a really hard time through this process, because it can be so tough, I put myself in the position, I started volunteering at a women's shelter. And me getting out of myself and helping another human being was huge in, again, growing my self-compassion, getting over my own ego, getting over myself and helping another human being. So getting out of your own way and being altruistic is really great fertilizer.
Absolutely. And giving is
Yeah.
another way to create magic and miracles in your
Yes,
life.
absolutely. Absolutely. It really is. And I think that's where Americans are very confused by altruism and giving and compassion. And I read somewhere that people are actually kind of afraid of it. And I think it just comes maybe back to just fear of love, fear of their own self-love, and they're afraid of intimacy and authenticness, and their hearts are blocked. So if your heart's blocked, then you're just going to react in such a way that you will continue to block yourself. Opening up that heart center is hugely important in living a mystical life.
And you touched on another topic there about authenticity, or having that kind of congruence or internal integrity with yourself, being the person you are here to be.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Now, you can create magic in your life without fully stepping into that place, because I do think that that's a journey that we go
Yeah.
on. Well, when we're young, we are automatically there, and our experiences and our environment kind of shift us and shape us, and
Mhm. Mhm.
we often end up stepping out of the person that we are,
Yes.
out of obligation or expectation.
Yes.
And then it's the journey to get back into it.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a beautiful analogy. Stepping out of the person that we are. That's gorgeous.
You said something else very interesting at the beginning, which I wholeheartedly agree with. You used the word wonder. And I've just got goosebumps as I say that, because that's something that my guides have told me that you can create magic with. I actually have a book that's almost fully written. It's
Oh,
it's
nice.
very close, and it's called Creating Magic.
Mhm.
And there are little tools to trigger the development of magic in your life, and
Mhm. Mhm.
having wonder is
Yes.
one of them. And it's that childlike wonder
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
really appreciating creation that's in front of you,
Yes.
and being totally kind of gobsmacked by the
Absolutely.
amazing place we live in.
Absolutely. Yeah, that childlike wonder, and also that childlike play. When you had that podcast about the dragons, she had probably a calling in some kind of way, where she connected with the dragons. And so she was naturally led to start working with them. Is, just naturally a natural affinity for one thing or the other.
Life is so interesting, and we all have different things that kind of feed and nourish our soul and bring us joy that we're passionate about. We don't all have the same focus, which is fantastic because it brings more variety and choice. So it's kind of paying attention to what lights you up inside, right?
Absolutely. What lights you up inside, what makes your heart sing, and stepping into it, just really owning it, and when I was thinking about how I talk to you about magic, it can be as superficial as pulling a rabbit out of a hat, or using your imagination to see fairies and, wonderful imaginative creatures around you, or it can go as deep as sorcery. And same with mysticism. It's just, how deep do you want this connection to become?
And you make up another good point too, is that traditional magic, like going to see a magic show, can spark
Yeah, it's fun. It's good.
that wonder and awe within you. So it's
Yeah,
not that it's
inspiring.
wrong or
Mhm.
superficial. It does its
Yes,
its job when
yes,
it lights
yes.
you up.
Great point. Yeah, absolutely. Lights you up, and that is really important.
So I'll just take this little opportunity then to give our listeners a couple tips of how they can spark wonder in their life. And the first thing is to slow down.
Mhm.
And when they're in that slower place,
Mhm. Mhm.
they can either get really small, like look at the microcosm of things, like the beauty of a flower or the amazing intricacy of whatever is before them, because it's fascinating when you look at things in detail. Everything is so amazing. Or they
Yeah.
can chunk it up into the macrocosm and look at the big picture.
Mhm.
Both things work. So
Yeah, that's
here's
very
to
true.
here's to inviting wonder and magic into your life.
Yeah, here's to inviting wonder magic into your life as well.
Synchronicities are another way that magic can show up in your life.
Yes. And paying attention to the interconnecting chains of events and knowing that it's just not random and that it's linked and there's a plan and paying attention to what is going on in front of you. I find that people don't pay attention, if they're not engaging with the person that's in front of them because they're so disconnected. So paying attention to what's happening in front of you, the interconnecting chains of events, and using that to move yourself forward or inspire you or ignite the light inside you to move forward or keep going or just be inspired. Inspire, it's like a snowball. One thing leads to another. You're inspired and it just keeps building and growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that inspiration can come from some pretty simple things. Like it could be
Absolutely.
as simple as looking at the clock and it's 11:11, or
Absolutely. How fun is that?
the song that the radio's playing has a message for you and you just kind of know. It's almost like you can feel it in your bones.
Yes, absolutely. That's why I usually just listen to very positive music for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part, we are here on Earth, and not everything is roses and sunshine and unicorns.
The things that aren't sunshine and unicorns, paying attention to those chains of events and the synchronicity of just how beautiful it all is, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember reading a channeled message. What they said is that when you can see the Earth from the higher levels, imagine you were floating out in space and you were looking down at the planet, but that you could see everything that was happening, that it's very beautiful and it's divine in its order, that
hmm
even the things
hmm
that don't make sense to us or seem
Yes.
very negative, they
hmm
have a purpose. Yeah.
That's what the astronauts have said when they have seen the Earth from the moon is just there's no way that this is a chance situation. And it's absolutely changed their lives. Like Edgar Mitchell is one of them. And he's definitely an alien believer, So
Yeah, yeah, it is a beautiful, beautiful earth, that's for sure. And the more we can appreciate our place here in this dimension, and the more that we can appreciate the blessings that we have in our life, the more we will create.
yeah, because it is the snowball. Absolutely.
So, Erica, do you have any other tips you'd like to share with the listeners?
You know, having a daily practice, I keep reading about this and just how important that is, no matter if it's right before bed or when you get up, but just taking some time during the day to continue to develop a mystical connection to your life.
I agree. Having appreciation also goes a long way. And that can be for other people, for yourself, for
Gratitude,
anything.
absolutely. Yeah, gratitude is really huge. And it is kind of I don't want to say the basics, but it is also kind of the basics: gratitude, altruism, connecting with your heart, connecting with other humans. They do work. I mean, it's the basics to learn the ABCs in kindergarten, but that's the basics. And that's what our language is built on, the ABCs. So, and from that comes a wide variety of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Erica, would you like to share your contact information with the listeners?
Yeah, I can be reached directly at sparkleinthedeep@yahoo.com.
Where will we find your podcast?
You'll find my podcast on SoundCloud, and my podcast will also be on iTunes.
Okay, fantastic. We'll put the links in the show notes. Thank you for watching this episode of Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. You can find us on YouTube, iTunes, and a wide variety of podcast platforms. Come visit me at thoughtchange.com. Pick up your free copy of Learning to Listen so that you can learn how to tune into your own inner wisdom for guidance. That's it for this week. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda.